Good day, everyone. My name is Andrea G. Caranzo, and I am the first presenter of Group 6. And my topic was all about conceptual knowledge and categorization. First of all, what do you think about when you think about knowledge? Facts you need to know for the cognitive psychology exam. The names of people you know, the location, the location of that favorite hard to find restaurant, what a black hole is, the list of what you know is vast because you know about a lot of things. We answer questions such as these all the time, usually without even realizing it. For example, imagine that you find yourself in an unfamiliar town where you have never been before. As you walk down the street, you notice that many things are not exactly the same as what you would encounter if you were in your own town. On the other hand, there are many things that seem familiar. Cars pass by, there are buildings on either side of the street and gas stations on the corner, and a cat dashes across the street and makes it safely to the other side. Luckily, you know a lot about cars, buildings, gas stations, and cats, so you have no trouble understanding what is going on. This chapter is about the conceptual knowledge that enables you to recognize and understand the objects in the street scene and the world. This knowledge exists in the form of concepts. Concepts have been defined in a number of ways, including the mental representation of a class or individual, and categories of objects, events, and abstract ideas. To express this in concrete terms, we can say that the concept cat is the answer to the question, what is a cat? If your answer is that a cat is an animal that is fury meows, can be petted, moves, and catches mice, you will have described some aspects of the concept cat. Because we are interested in our knowledge about the world, we need to go beyond cats. When we start expanding our scope to dogs, automobiles, can openers, radishes, and roses, things start to become both more complicated and more interesting because the question then becomes how are all of these things organized in the mind? One way we organize concepts is in terms of categories. So, let's talk about category. A category includes all possible examples of a particular concept. Thus, the category cats includes tabbies, Siamese cats, Persian cats, wild cats, leopards, and so on. Look at in this way, concepts provide the rules for creating categories. Thus, the mental representation for cat would affect what animals we place in the cat category. Because concepts provide rules for sorting objects into categories. Concepts and categories are often discussed together, and a great deal of research has focused on the process of categorization, the process by which things are placed in categories. And categorization is something we do every time we place an object into a category. And once we have assigned an object to a category, we know a lot about it. For example, being able to say that a furry animal across the street is a cat provides a great deal of information about it. Now look at the figure 9.1 or the picture beside the paragraph. Categories have therefore been called pointers to knowledge. Once you know that something is in a category, whether cat, gas station, or impressionism painting, you can focus your energy on specifying what's special about this particular object. Excuse me. Now you see the now you see the cat in the picture, and you will also think what's special about this particular object. Now you can see that the arrow that the cat catches mice, difficult to train, has whiskers, sleeps a lot but more active at night, meows and purrs. A talent related to lions and tigers, likes to rub up against people and other objects, and likes milk or fish. So this is the category of the cat. This is what we talk about the specifying what's special about this particular object. And next, we have the categorization again. Categorization not only helps understand what is happening in the environment, it also plays an essential role how our objects place into categories. Enabling us to take action. For example, to spread jam on bread, you must recognize the jam jar, the bread, and the knife. Realize the relevant properties. Bread is soft unless it is toasted. Knives are rugged and jam is sticky. And know how to grasp the knife handle with the right grip to scrape the jam from its jar. Being able to place things in categories can also help us understand behaviors that we might otherwise find baffling. For example, if we see a man with the left side of his face painted black and the right side painted gold, we might wonder what is going on. However, once we note that the person is heading towards the football stadium and it is Sunday afternoon, we can categorize. The person is a Pittsburgh Steelers fan. Placing him in the category explains his painted face and perhaps other strange behaviors that happen to be normal on game day in Pittsburgh. In Pittsburgh, these various uses of categories testify to their importance in everyday life. It is no exaggeration to say that if there were no such thing as categories, we would have a very difficult time dealing with the world. Consider what it would mean if every time you saw a different object, you knew nothing about it other than what you could find out by investigating it individually. Clearly, life would become extremely complicated if we weren't able to rely on the knowledge provided to us by categories. Yes, categories are important, but what do we need to know in order to understand categories? Um, okay, the answer to this question isn't obvious because we routinely categorize things. So it seems like an automatic process. It's obvious that there is a cat sitting in a chair across the room, a cat and a chair, and room being different categories. These things and thousands of others are so easy to categorize that there seems to be no problem to solve. But as with other cognitive abilities, just because it's easy doesn't mean it's simple. So we will face the complication of the categorization. So here it is. The categorization becomes more difficult if you encounter something unfamiliar. Yeah. Like the question is, what is that over there? An aardvark? Very strange. Or things become even more difficult when a person suffers a brain injury that makes it difficult to identify different objects or know what they are used for. Once we understand that there are situations in which categorizations become difficult, things become more interesting because recognizing and understanding these difficulties is the first step to uncovering the mechanism of categorization. So, okay, these chapters consider in three major sections. And the difficulties of categorization, and the mechanisms involved in day-to-day categorization. Each of the three sections tells a story that involves a different approach to categorization. So here it is. The the first in the section was the basic properties of concepts and categories. So we consider a behavioral approach that originated with a series of experiments began in the 1970s, which have helped us understood how we place objects in different categories and which have shown that not all objects are created equal. In the second section, network models of categorization, we consider the network approach to categorization that began in the 1960s, inspired by the emerging field of computer science, which created computer models of how categories are represented in the mind. In the third section, how categories are represented in the brain, we take a physiological approach, which looks at the relationship between categories and the brain. Okay, now we will see that each approach provides its own perspective on categorization, and that all three together provide a more complete explanation of categorization than any one approach alone. Basic properties of concepts and categories where you consider the following questions about the basic properties of categories, like how are different objects, events, or ideas assigned to a particular category? How can categories be defined? Why we do why do we say that not all things in categories are created equal? Okay, now this is the question. How are objects placed into categories? A time-honored approach to determining the characteristics of an object is to look up its definition. We begin by describing how cognitive psychologists have shown that this definitional approach to sorting objects into categories doesn't work. We then consider another approach, which is based on determining how similar an object is to other objects in a category. According to the definitional approach to categorization, we can decide whether something is a member of category by determining whether a particular object meets the definition of the category. Definitions work well for something such as geometric objects. Thus, defining a square as a plane figure having four equal sides with all internal angles the same works. However, for most natural objects such as birds, trees, and plants, and many human-made objects like chairs, definitions do not work well at all. The problem is that not all of members of everyday categories have the same features. So, although the dictionary definition of a chair is a piece of furniture consisting of seat, legs, back, and often arms, designed to accommodate one person, may sound reasonable. There are objects we call chairs that don't meet the definitions. For example, although the objects in look at this figure 9.2 and 9.p. Okay, that's would be classified as chairs. Now look at the pictures. By this definition, the ones in figure 9.2 and 9.2c and 9.d would not. Um, most chairs may have legs and back as specified in the definition, but most people would still call the dish shaped furniture in figure 9.2c a chair and might go so far as to say that the rock formation is big in figure 9.2. Look at the girl sitting in a rock that says the 9.2D is being used as a chair also. The philosopher Wittgenstein 1953 noted this problem with definitions and offered solution. So here's the solution. Consider Consider a family resemblance as a jumping off point for experiments that investigated the basic nature of categories. One of the early ideas to emerge from these experiments is the idea of prototypes, and the topic of prototypes will be discussed by the next reporter. This will be all my reporter, and I hope you understand it. Thank you.